Sometimes I'll be scrolling Instagram and I'll stop and I'll see a video of this really plump, healthy, radiant baby, and it's one of yours. And I'm curious as a mother, what's the legacy that you want to leave for them?
I raise them with the values of shopping local. They know their farmers. We have the largest conglomerate of microbes in our guts, but we actually have a microbiome of our mouth and our blood. Every single vital organ has a microbiome. Biggest superfood is one you can digest. The biorhythm, so how the food was grown, matches your own, and that really has an impact on our hormones. The body shows us what we actually need, and the physiology doesn't lie.
There's so much out there telling us that meat is bad for the earth.
How could that be true? We've evolved eating meat forever.
As women, when we center our health and we center ourselves and our children, we are bringing as much well-being into the world as we can. That is the legacy. Welcome to the Womben Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Usha Nandi, and you're in the right place if you're looking to heal yourself as a woman, not just for you, but for all the women who came before you and all the women who will come after. Learn ancient practices, hear vulnerable stories that remind you you're not alone and you're definitely not crazy, and tap into the bravery that it takes to be an undomesticated woman in the world we live in today. You know, the best interviews start when your guest comes on eating pieces of steak. And that's how this interview with Kate Pope began. In this conversation, we go super deep into what women need in order to be healthy in our fertile years, in our childbearing years. And Kate breaks it down in a really scientific and practical way. And you know I love that, because at Womben Wellness, we're all about the science and the sacred. The conversation gets even more rich as we continue on. So I really encourage you to listen to the whole episode where we talk about our power as women and our power as mothers to set the tone in our families and to create health and wellness and vitality in our world, even as it seems like the world around us burns. Kate Pope is a mom, holistic chef, and nutritional therapy practitioner and certified GAPS practitioner. Through her cooking and nutrition courses, she educates families and communities on the importance of local food systems, cooking meals at home for physical and mental and emotional health. And from 2016 to 2021, Kate worked as a private chef in Seattle, Washington, and the Big Island of Hawaii. She founded the Regenerative Cooking School in 2019 so that she could reach more parents and families around her message, advocating gut health and real food for children. Kate helps babies and mothers start solid the gut health way and teaches moms how to use food as medicine to reverse symptoms like eczema, allergies, and digestive issues. I love this conversation. We went so deep, two mothers being real about what it took for us to be healthy and what it continues to take, not just to keep ourselves well as women, but to grow healthy and happy children. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Hi, Kate. Thank you so much for being here on the Womben Wellness Podcast with us.
Hey, I'm excited to be here.
So sometimes I'll be scrolling Instagram and I'll stop and I'll see a video of this really plump, healthy, radiant baby, and it's one of yours. And so I know that you raise your children in a very specific way. And I'm curious as a mother, what's the legacy that you want to leave for them?
Well, I want them to know how to cook. I want them to know their body, and I want them to be able to differentiate what's good for them. I raise them with the values of shopping local. They know their farmers. They believe and understand that food comes from the farmer's market more than the grocery store. And more than anything, I want them to have a satisfied, fulfilled life because they have the health that they need to fulfill their dreams.
That's so beautiful and such an important gift that you can give your children right now while they're in their care is to build that health. And so one of the things that you talk a lot about is the microbiome. And I know a lot of women who are here hear that word, off and on. And so I'm wondering if you can kind of take us into what is the microbiome and why is it important for women specifically?
Yeah, it's really great that the microbiome content has become more trendy because the health of our microbiome is so important and so crucial crucial for our overall health. But at the same time, it can easily just be like put in with other trends that you think like, oh, the microbiome, that must just be a trend. It's actually not a trend. We have co-evolved with trillions of microbes, and they help us to live really, really well. So we have the largest conglomerate of microbes in our guts, and you've heard about the gut microbiome, but we actually have a microbiome of our mouth and our blood. Every single vital organ has a microbiome. And when I describe it like that, it might seem like they're all separate, but actually the health of each of those microbes and microbiomes is spilling over into the other. And so with the gut being the largest place where we have microbes, the health of our gut is so crucial for how the rest of our organs and our organ systems function. And that comes down to what I really talk about often with mothers is the detoxification system, brain health, and immune health. All of those really come from how well our gut is doing.
And so much of our vaginal health too, right?
Absolutely. Yep. The bowel flora is right next to the vaginal flora. So there's a lot of spillover there. And actually one of the first courses I ever taught was gut and vaginal health. And now that's gone into the content of Mama Baby Biome. But I just really wanted people to have a more holistic look at why they were getting the recurrent infections, UTIs, etc., because it has so much to do with what's going on in your gut and the type of foods that you're eating.
And so much of what we think is good for our gut, it's like when I get people coming to me with gut issues, or they just took a round of antibiotics, or that have reoccurring vaginal infections, the first thing they ask is, should I be taking probiotics? So tell me a little bit about what your approach is versus let's just take these probiotic pills, because I know that it's different.
Yeah, so I am a food first nutritionist, meaning I want to do everything possible with food and lifestyle before I use any type of supplementation. I use very few supplements in my practice because I believe that the best way to heal the body and to heal the gut is with food. Now, there are certain uses for targeted supplementation on an individual level, but I never even go there until we have the food foundations down packed. And so we eat really gut healthy foods every single day. Some of my tops are meat stock, meat close to the bone, organ meats, homemade fermented foods like dairy and vegetables.
Oh, I want to dive into that. I'm like meat stock, bone broth. There's so many words we're going to get to. But first, Kate, like when I look at your content, it's babies eating meat, and it's like living in a way that is deeply connected to the earth, deeply connected to regenerative food systems. And so this is kind of like outside the norm, right? Most of us go to a big grocery store, we buy meat, we don't know where it's coming from. And so tell me, what got you into this? Like, what was that turning point in your life where you decided, I'm going to go this way?
Yeah, I was actually sick myself. I finished a really rigorous dance program and I had adrenal fatigue. I had these immune system problems. So I was like getting sick often, constantly sneezing, allergies, food allergies, and a lot of fatigue. And I started seeing an acupuncturist, and she basically introduced me to the local farmers market and was like, the quality of food that you eat really matters. And it was just one of those moments that made so much sense to me. It was such an enjoyable shopping experience rather than like a chore. Although I always liked the grocery store, it was just so neat to meet these people who were growing such beautiful food, taking care of animals. And then when I literally tasted the food, I was like, well, there's no turning back now. This tastes delicious. So I was so much driven by my desire as well as my love for community. I mean, this was in Florida at the time when I was doing this healing work with the acupuncturist. I actually moved back to this town, and it's the same vibe of the farmers market. Like, it's a beautiful outside venue, very, like mom and pop feel. You get to know all the vendors. Has a party vibe as well, so it feels really good to go there. And then the way that those foods were transforming my body, I was like, well, this is a no-brainer. Became a huge part of my mission. I ended up moving to Seattle and working for a rancher at the farmer's market. She took me under her wing and just really showed me, introduced me to all of the other vendors and showed me that there was just beautiful community here. And from there, I became a private chef. And I wasn't a trained chef, so I leaned into the simplicity of a local fresh food, which automatically elevated the food. So it was like, oh, this is elevating my dishes. I can just shop local and use these super high quality ingredients. I don't have to do much to them for them to be impressive, right? And it was a big job. I worked for one family for 5 years, private jets, like the whole thing. It was real. And through that, I also was like, well, we can use food to heal. This person was on the low fat paradigm. So he was like deathly afraid of butter. And I was like, I don't think that's right. Like, I'm pretty sure butter heals. Yeah, but it was very much like a patriarchal situation. So me asserting myself and even presenting facts, like it was just shut down, shut down, shut down. So I used my salary from that job to put myself through nutrition school. And that's where everything really came together, because I was like, had these cooking skills, I was sourcing local. Then I got the nutrition training to really back what I was finding through my own body. And that just really set me on a path. And then of course, having children was the next like big impetus for change and my mission.
Mm-hmm. And so tell me, like, as a nutritional therapy practitioner, you know, in the wellness world, there's so much hype around certain foods, or like, don't eat this, but eat that. And then, you know, 10 years later, it'll totally switch. Like, people used to think butter was evil. Now we know butter isn't. So what do you think about a diet of superfoods where people are sourcing like these really high superfoods, high vibration, you know, from halfway across the world, versus what eating local from a seasonal menu can do for your body?
Absolutely. So the biggest superfood is one you can digest, and that is very nutrient dense. So the more nutrient dense foods come from our local economies because they're picked at peak ripeness. The biorhythm, so how the food was grown, matches your own, and that really has an impact on our hormones. The taste is better, the nutrients are bigger. And so those are the true superfoods. That really is what you can digest is going to be the superfood, the super nutrition. And I really prize a lot of the animal foods, the ancient foods, the foods our ancestors would have been eating as the superfoods. And it's funny you bring this up, because this is a topic I talk a lot about in the context of 100 foods before one for babies, which is a really popular idea for starting solids. And I'm like, but why? Why are we going to get them quinoa as a part of their random 100 foods before one, when we could just prioritize the local food system and get that baby nutrient dense foods that is best for them to digest? So my joke is 100 trillion microbes before one, which really happens in one bite of a sauerkraut brine or something like that.
So you're tricking us. You're tricking us with that. I love
Yeah,
that.
I say 100 trillion microbes before 100 foods before one. And the local food system is the most reliable source of good nutrition that you can get for your family.
I love that. And, you know, something you said there just really sticks out, which the most nutritious food you can eat is one you can digest. And so a lot of women today struggle with indigestion. In Ayurveda, we talk about Agni, which is the source of transformation in your body, being the root of 95% of all diseases. And so for women who are coming here with impaired digestion, maybe they're bloated, constipated, maybe they've got diarrhea, maybe they feel heavy and lethargic, they've got a lot of food intolerances, where would they start in incorporating some of these more gut healing foods into their diet? Because a lot of people think, oh, I need to cut out gluten, I need to cut out dairy, I need to cut out sugar. And what I see is a lot of women just have these super restricted diets because of their gut imbalances. So tell me about that. Where would they even start?
Yeah. So one of the things that I appreciate so much about my nutrition training is that it was a physiology first approach. So we look at how the body functions in order to assess what the body needs, or how the body's not functioning as well as it could, right? That is our clue into where we begin. And so one of the foundations of our health is our digestion. And so digestion, a little metaphor, it is a north to south process. We always look north, even if the digestive issues are happening further south. So that would mean if you have gas and bloating, or you have constipation, we think of that as at the end of the digestive cascade. But in order to address that, we actually want to look north. So we would start with the parasympathetic nervous system. Are you in a parasympathetic state, and are you able to digest your food? Now, interestingly, the nervous system, it's kind of like a nebulous concept when the way that it's described online, but it's actually like an organ, right? If you were to open up your body, you would see nerves. And so what do we need to nourish those nerves, to nourish the nervous system? We need fat soluble vitamins, and we need protein. And so both of those places are wonderful to start. And I love to suggest that mothers start with meat stock, or women in general. Meat stock is a very easy to digest broth, which is different than bone broth, and it's full of nutrition. It's very changing to the microbiome, and it's really good and soothing for the nervous system. So I help mothers warm up their digestive fire get into a parasympathetic state with the foods that they're actually eating. And then you can also layer lifestyle practices on top of that.
And I love that it's just such a different approach, right? Because a lot of things online is like, oh, do this breath work or do this jaw exercise or do this practice to bring yourself into a parasympathetic state. And what you're saying is, yeah, and you can also do that daily with your food.
Yeah, you have to actually. If you're going to heal the nervous system, the biochemical aspect has to be a part of it. And what I found is that nervous system foods, your nervous system is a very hungry organ and it loves fats and it loves proteins.
Okay, so I've just got like my question chomping at the bit. I'm like, do I want to go into this? And I'm like, yeah, I want to go into this because this is for undomesticated women, this podcast. So, okay, let's talk about like vegetarianism versus eating meat. We've had this conversation before, you and I, but a lot of women listening might not eat meat. Some of them might be on the fence of like, I really want to eat meat, but I feel guilty and I'm going to lose my identity and be shunned, all things that I felt when I was a yogi and vegetarian. And so you do this great differentiator between plants and animal-based foods. Can you talk a little bit about just the difference between both of those?
Yeah, so I approach this with a really simple lens that helps to clarify which foods to use at which time. I want you all to picture a yin and yang symbol, and the yin and the yang is building foods and cleansing foods. So within every building foods, there's a bit of cleansing, and within every cleansing food, there's a little bit of building, and they work best together. So building foods are animal foods, and when I say build, I mean repair, rebuild, strengthen, nourish, replenish, right? And when I say cleanse, I mean cleanse, like what we all think of. We think of like detox pathways. We think of antioxidants. You think of the plant compounds, the polyphenols, all those things that help our detox system. So building foods and cleansing foods is a really simple way of describing what we eat and understanding how they help our body. Now, I work mostly with women in their fertile years, in the childbearing continuum, repairing from birth. And so there's a huge emphasis on building foods, and those are our animal foods. But as you're working on a gut rebuilding protocol and as you're healing your body, you may have days where you're leaning more into cleansing foods or days where you're leaning more into building foods. And just like I said in the beginning with that yin and yang symbol, we can see that there's a little bit of both in each. And really what you're working for is both together in harmony.
And tell me like a little bit about, because we talked about this before and I noticed this in me. So I remember you talking about how your face changed when you started to eat meat. And I'm going to let you talk in a second, but Kate, I want to tell you, like, it's crazy. If I look at pictures of myself, like 6 years ago when I was vegetarian, I look like a completely different person. And so tell me what meat does specifically to women in our childbearing years. I know that it helps build. I know it takes tissue to make tissue, but why is it so nourishing for us just beyond the building and the nervous system part? And how did it change you to start incorporating it in your diet again?
One of the reasons why meat is so nourishing is because it's bioavailable. So we were talking about digestion. We were talking about the top of the stomach or top of the digestive cascade as the nervous system. So your brain and preparing your body with your senses is where digestion begins. And then we chew our food. We have both a mechanical and a chemical breakdown of our food in our mouth. And when we swallow, we hit a big bowl of acid. And that big bowl of acid is perfect for breaking down animal proteins. And it's very different than the stomach of an herbivorous animal. They have rumens. They have multiple stomachs. A cow will chew its food up to 200 times, filling it with saliva, swallowing it, regurgitating, and continuing to chew. For humans, our digestion, the power comes from the stomach acid. And yes, we do have a mechanism for breaking down some plant foods, but the majority of our digestion is designed for breaking down animal foods. And contained within those animal foods is every nutrient that the human body needs. So within plants, we have some nutrition that humans can get and need, but within animals, we have everything that we need. And there's nothing from an animal-based diet that we cannot get from plants. And yet when we have a plant-based diet, we need more nutrition from something else, somewhere else, whether that's a supplement or adding in animal products. So that is really how I describe the essence of it. And then babies growing brain, they need cholesterol. So there's a special enzyme in breast milk, which is designed so that baby gets every ounce of cholesterol. If mama eats a lot of cholesterol rich foods, which are animal-based foods, that baby is going to have more access to that cholesterol, which they cannot make themselves. Adults can make cholesterol in their liver. Babies do not. Up to 2 years old, they are relying on cholesterol from mother's milk.
That's so interesting. And so, as we get into the meat topic, I always track a little bit of activation in my body. So I remember when I first announced to my community that I was eating meat after almost a decade of being vegetarian and vegan, I had like 1,000 comments on that post of all these women wanting to cancel me. So many hateful messages I got. And I knew it was coming, but I was also kind of taken aback. And so I'm wondering, you're so loud and proud. I mean, everyone, I want you to know that Kate came on this interview eating chunks of steak. And I was like, yes, yes. And so how do you deal with that? Like, there is so much pressure right now out there around avoiding animal foods. And we'll get to why in a minute, but on a personal level, as a woman, as a mother, as a human, how do you deal with that in your system?
Yeah, it's a great question because I wasn't so brave at first. I was trying to be brave and I was really just needing to understand more about how the body works. So once I understood like that piece about cholesterol, how much babies' brains really do need it. My own experience with using, animal foods to heal my body, my love of meat, honestly. I've loved meat since I was a little girl. I've always had this kind of fascination with women cooking and preparing raw meat. I've had no problem ever touching it. I'm just very drawn to it and drawn to eating it. I feel so much better. I actually only had a short stint of vegetarianism in college, just 6 months, where these men actually challenged me that if I cared about the world, I would be vegetarian. And so I went through that process and I really didn't feel good at the end. And you had asked that piece about like facial structures changing, bodies changing. Well, when we rely primarily on carbohydrate foods, we are really changing our metabolism. And so from a physiologic standpoint, all sugar, whether it's cane sugar or just a carbohydrate food, breaks down into glucose. And so when we are primarily running on glucose, our body is producing a lot of insulin, and excess insulin in the body is going to lead to metabolic damage. So if we're primarily eating those carbohydrate foods, that is shifting our body composition and how well we're able to utilize our energy. Like I said, it's not like I do a low carb diet necessarily, but I really focus on the foods that are going to build my body during this time. And I think that my vibrant health came from, and especially my children. I mean, just look at them. People stop me on the streets and they are like, whoa, what's up with these kids? Because they just, my husband and I both prepared our bodies for 2 years before we had our children. And that was an amazing process. And it shines through so much of their personality and their behaviors and their appetites and their sleep and their digestion. All of that shows me that what I'm doing is really, really right. And so it took like titration, right? With my nervous system, just inching myself out there a little bit more and more, getting more and more bold, hearing the feedback and just allowing that feedback to wash over me and to feel what that felt like. And really to just make my stance even more clear, which is that the body shows us what we actually need and the physiology doesn't lie.
I love that. And so it's like, even though there's the external pressure to be a certain way, there's the internal truth being shown to you again and again, reflected through your children, through your partner, and your own body.
Yeah.
And so tell me a little bit more, because I know you're really into regenerative cooking. Your husband is a butcher, right?
He is not working as a butcher anymore, but yes, he did. When we were living in Washington, he was working on a mobile farm butcher. So he was working at like 200 regenerative farms in the Pacific Northwest. And actually he was doing the kill. So he was knocking the animals and then they would break them down into primals, load them up on the trailer, and then bring them to the shop where they would be wrapped and packed.
And so tell me, a lot of women here, it's like this podcast is for women who are tired of being good and want to be free. And one of the ways that we try to be good is we want to do the best thing for the environment, right? And there's so much out there telling us that meat is bad for the earth, and that if you actually care about the environment, just like those men, pressured you into vegetarianism, then why would you eat meat? It's so unethical. And so Tell me what you think about that, because I know you source your meat in a different way. So how can women still care about the environment and nourish their bodies at the same time?
Yeah. So the best thing that we can do to secure local food economies and to sustain our healthy home ecosystems is to shop local and to meet your rancher. So knowing your rancher, even if your meat isn't like 100% grass fed, buying local, that system is so much smaller than the grocery store 100% grass fed that I would actually make that local choice over, a grass fed and finished beef at the grocery store because of the ethics around local food economies. I just think that that is the most security that we can give to our children. And that is the best food that we can buy rather than outsourcing, right? But we all start where we start. And so I always want to have this conversation in a really nuanced way, which gives a lot of like compassion and understanding and grace for busy moms and like trying to rewrite our food legacy or, just create a day-to-day that's different for our children. And so like if you're just shopping at Costco and you want to start by getting the grass-fed beef at Costco, that is going to be a better option than the industrial beef. And even if you cannot afford to buy grass-fed and grass-finished beef, I still promote eating meat because I believe it is that important for the body. Now, that question about the earth and about taking care of the earth, it's a really good one and it's a tough one because so much around us tells us that we need to stop eating meat because meat is causing climate change. And I think the step before stop eating meat is stop buying fast fashion. Consider the jets that are flying around the world and travel, right? There's so many ways that we could look at waste, and you might feel really strongly in your body that your route is conserving waste in one particular way, and you go ahead, girl, and lead that charge. I am telling mothers and women that we need meat for our bodies. We need meat to stay sane and to feel good every single day. And so that means get it at whatever cost you can. And as your body heals, as you're committed to that journey, you will find a way to source the better meat. So I choose feeling good in my family. Having a healthy home ecosystem to me multiplies and ripples effects, has the ripple effect that is so much more profound than some large billionaire conglomerate company telling me that like meat's bad for the planet. It's like, no, it's not. It's actually not. How could that be true? We've evolved eating meat forever. Like, it's just not true.
I love that. I remember, I used to live in Costa Rica, and every time I would fly into the capital there, I would have to drive like 5 hours to where I was living in the Caribbean. And that area is really bought up by Dole and Chiquita, like, all of these monocropped, pesticide grown pineapples and bananas. And they're just sprayed with pesticides. These pesticide planes fly over them and spray the ground with pesticides. It even sprays the workers in the fields. All of those pesticides go into the ocean. There's a huge amount of die-off. And then it's monocropping, which we know sucks a lot of nutrients from the soil and basically leaves the topsoil completely desolate so that they have to change and grow somewhere else. And it was such a big awakening for me because I remember at the time I was vegan and I was like, all of my vegan friends are telling me that this is better for the earth than eating lamb that I raised when I lived on my farm in Oregon growing up. Like, there was something there that just didn't make sense. And so I'm really grateful that you brought that kind of nuanced perspective that allows women to engage wherever they are. But I think we need to kind of zoom out and look at these huge, big agricultural systems and how they're affecting our earth as a whole. Because it's not just, the factory farm industry, it's big agriculture in general that is harming the earth and in turn harming us. So I think it's very rebellious, Kate, to choose ourselves so that we can be healthy enough to then make change and bring health into the world.
Absolutely. And I just love what you said about the topsoil. A lot of people here might not know the concept of a closed loop system. So essentially what regenerative farming aims to be is a closed loop system. So That means that the farmer can grow and sustain itself as one whole ecosystem without outsourcing, even grain or feed for animals. A lot of closed loop regenerative agriculture systems try to sustain within their own farm. And so you can imagine the kind of waste that is brought down by this. Like, White Oak Pastures is a great reference for a regenerative farm if you want to know about them. They just do a lot of education and great discussion around, being fourth generation farmer and how he changed his farm from pesticides to regenerative and what that took and what that process means to him. So look that up. But also just know that you live your priorities every day. If this is something that you value, if you know your family needs meat for their health, then you will just work your way there step by step by step until your whole family system is relying on your local food economy and everyone's in vibrant health.
I love that. And that's like really about, so many of us are like, where is the village? I want the village. I want the community. But then we're not putting our money and our energy in actually being a villager and supporting the people who are around us.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's so fun to be a villager.
Yeah. I love farmers market. You were like talking about the farmers market. I was like, oh, I need to take my wicker basket to the market and get my vegetables and my meat. It almost awakens an ancestral memory in me when I go to have that relationship with the people who grow my food, who, raise the animals. There's something really ancestral about that for me. It's like a coming home.
Absolutely. Yeah. I always talk about healing generations backwards and forwards. And you mentioned that too before we started this talk. And I think that is the remembering of our time and of our generation. I mean, I feel like, I guess this goes back to your other question too about the meat aspect and just the real food aspect, not even, with candy and all these kinds of things that are constantly assaulting children. Like a lot of mothers in my circle are asking me about like, we don't want to create eating disorders in our children. We don't want what about the blue cupcake and all these weird things that they come in contact, school sports and these kinds of like constant snacking. And we're really creating boundaries that become the standards that we live by and the standards that our children expect. And I just have no problem at all carrying this torch because it has been so profound for me. And we're still really close to it, actually. Like the past 100 years, we got messed up with processed foods and we really lost ourselves in the industry and the world super changed. But it's like it's just 1, 2, 3 generations far away. And I want to instill that in my children so that it's reinstated, for them and for generations coming forward, because what are we leaving them? It's like, I can't leave it like this. I have to make a small change. And we know that starts with mothers. We know that starts with families. And then all that ripple impact that you have in your local community is what really changes your day to day and makes life worth living.
Yeah. And that reminds us so much of our power, because I know a lot of women listening are probably like, oh my God, for me right now, it's AI. I'm having this like really big internal, like, what is AI? I'm pretty sure it's evil. I'm pretty sure I don't want to use it. It's freaking me out. People are talking to it. I'm like, I'm not sure about this yet. And for other people, it's like big agriculture, all these different toxins in our environments. And so it's really easy in our world today to feel like we don't have control. Like we don't have power, like our world is in peril, and what can we even do about it? And yet as women, when we center our health and we center ourselves and our children, we are bringing as much well-being into the world as we can. That is the legacy, right? That's the inheritance of raising our children in a way where it doesn't matter how the world goes, they're going to be fine. Exactly. Because of how they were raised.
Yes.
And so I'm curious, Kate, like for me, I've gone off and on, like I'm a single mom. So it's like some days I get it right, some days I don't. And so the days that I start my daughter, she's 4.5 now, I start her with protein, are so different than the days that I don't. And so tell me what you see in children's behavior, because I've really noticed this in my daughter, that when she's got enough protein, enough fat, she is like a different child. And so tell me what you see in children's behavior and how their diet is impacted.
Food is medicine. Food is our fuel. Food is information for the body. And this harkens back to earlier in the conversation, we were talking about what we can digest and our microbiomes and our blood sugar regulation. So when we start the day with a piece of protein and some animal fat, that really sets our metabolic health up for success. So carbohydrates have a very different influence on our blood sugar than our proteins. Although protein also breaks down to glucose and utilizes insulin, the spike is way more stable and slow compared to a carbohydrate food. So I'm talking about like a pancake, something like that, even whole grain. That carbohydrate food is broken down into sugar, and then the body utilizes that sugar for different things. And you might have heard that the brain's preferred source of fuel is glucose. So the brain's preferred source of fuel is actually fat. And what we want to be is metabolically flexible. So we want to be able to burn fat, and we want to be able to burn carbohydrates. Again, no macronutrient is bad. It's just how well your body can utilize them. And everyone has a really bio-individual need as they come to the table. And, desires can tell you what you want. But if we have an imbalanced microbiome, if we have pathogens overgrown in the gut, if we've had a history of antibiotic use, even all the way back at your child's birth, if they've consumed a lot of processed foods, if they have had a lot of pharmaceuticals, if they're in touch with toxins, just like maybe, 10 years ago or 5 years ago, you were like using Tide laundry detergent. You had no idea that was, hormone disruptor, endocrine disruptor. So anyway, all those factors have created your child's current microbiome. And if it's overrun with pathogens or a little bit imbalanced with more yeast, candida, that can really increase the craving for sugar. And that craving for sugar would, of course, drive eating more sugar and sugary foods and carbohydrate foods, which would then impact the blood sugar. So instead of a steady, long burning fuel and energy system that you get from proteins and fats, you're on what we call the blood sugar roller coaster. So you're having spikes and dips all day long. It makes you want your 10 a.m. coffee. It's what makes you think like suddenly you need a cookie, you eat that cookie, and you're like, whoa, why did I even eat that? I don't even know why. It was just so fast. That's both your microbiome and your low blood sugar. And so by starting our day with proteins and fats, we are setting our children up for that steady blood sugar, long burning fuel that they need to focus and to have a healthy immune system.
I love that. And so tell me about, I get this question a lot. Women are right on the edge of introducing meat into their diet, and some of them already have. And when they do, it starts to really mess with their digestion. Like they can't digest it. Maybe they feel really heavy after. So what is a good way for women listening who are like, okay, fine, Usha and Kate, they're selling me. I'm going to try it. I'm going to take a bite of meat. What is a good way to start introducing it back into the diet? How can they do that?
Well, I always start. So a lot of recovering vegans come to me and they are in my DMs and they're saying like, hey, I'm ready to start. Like, where do I start? Can you help me? And I'm happy to help all of you. I love it. So meat stock is a great place to start because it is a simple to digest broth. Essentially, it's warming, it's delicious. You're also using like the whole animal. So that's really appealing to people who have strong values on like not wasting, right? I'm very much about using nose to tail. I eat all the parts. It's a very important part of the ethos of what I teach. And meat stock is great for you. It's a really good place to start. Now, that other question about not being able to digest meat right away, this has to do again with our physiology and what we've been talking about, which was the stomach acid. So when you eat large amounts of carbohydrate foods, which are plant foods, grains, etc., over time, your stomach acid lessens. So your body's like, hey, she's not utilizing this pepsin to break down proteins. I'm going to make less stomach acid. Not to mention the nutrients that come from meat are some of the cofactors needed to produce large amounts of stomach acid. So all you need to do when you start eating meat again is support your body with a little stomach acid supplement. And you don't take the supplement forever. It's just HCl butane hydrochloric acid. You take it with your meals as you slowly integrate more meat, and that will increase your stomach acid. And with moderate to low levels of stomach acid, you can just do away with that supplement in 1 or 2 months. And then you'll be on your way to eating and enjoying and properly digesting meat because your body has adequate levels of pepsin and hydrochloric acid, which break down those proteins.
And that's so great to mention because a lot of women who come to me, they're like, I tried to eat meat. They told me it was probably going to make me feel better, but then it totally messed up my digestion. So I must not be able to do it. And what you're saying is no, just support your stomach acid and then your body will be able to, because you're also giving it the precursors to make more stomach acid in the future.
Exactly. So it's just a matter of really retraining like we would a little baby, we would just help them when they transition from breast milk, we help them transition and learn how to eat solid foods. And the same thing, if you've had years of vegetarianism or you grew up as a vegetarianism, you're just going to have to gently shift your body to eating meat, and it will adapt very quickly and it will love you and thank you for it.
And you said, you went into meat stock there, and I wanted to go back to that. So I'm so glad you did. So bone broth is like pretty much everyone and their friend knows about bone broth. It's like, oh, I'm making bone broth. I'm being so healthy. But you actually talk about meat stock a lot. And so what's the difference between meat stock versus bone broth, and why is meat stock so beneficial?
Yes, I love talking about this topic. It's so cool that bone broth is like mainstream, right? Like you see it on the grocery store shelves. Everyone knows what bone broth is now. So that's great. An ancestral food that has hit the mainstream. Wonderful. And the main thing that I am emphasizing again and again is we cook our own food. Cooking your own food is the best way to heal. Everything that you cook with your own hands is going to assist you in the healing process. And it's again, that connection to the ancestors and that gift that you're giving to your children. Bone broth is characteristic of a long cooked broth, usually 48, 72 hours. And we mostly are using bones without meat on it, typically, right? Then when it comes to meat stock, we are doing a short cook time. So 1 to 2 hours, 4 to 6 for a bigger animal like beef. And we are always using a piece of meat with a joint and a bone. So it's about the connective tissue, the collagen, and all of the nutrients that essentially melt down into that warming, delicious broth that I love. So bone broth, while it is a nutritious food, typically when we're going about gut healing, I have people start with meat stock because meat stock contains components that aren't even in bone broth because it doesn't have the meat. It doesn't have all the connective tissue. So with the meat stock, we're actually able to rebuild tissue, which is key when it comes to the childbearing continuum or to children's healing like chronic issues like eczema, allergies, which is typically what I work with, or mothers healing from birth. We want that makeup in our stock to really be able to rebuild the body. That is what we're doing. Rebuilding tissue, rebuilding the gut tissue, the nervous tissue, the immune tissue, all of that is being supported through meat stock, which you can't actually get from bone broth. Bone broth is mineral rich. It's a great way to use up all the animal, all the parts, all the waste, etc. But I typically have people start at meat stock, and once they make meat stock, they never go back because they're like, this is just so freaking good.
I can attest to that. I remember when I was postpartum, in the first 40 days cookbook, you know that cookbook?
Yeah,
there is
great.
A great recipe of oxtail soup.
So good.
It's so good. And I remember I had just started eating meat like a month before I got pregnant with my daughter. And so when I was postpartum, I was like full meat eater mode, that breastfeeding mode. And so I love that oxtail soup so much. It just felt like the most nourishing thing that my dad actually made me a 5-gallon bucket of it. It was like so much oxtail soup. I was like, Dad, this is a little overkill. Thank you so much. I don't think I finished it all, but that's how much my body was craving it. There was such a deep desire. And I know that women listening, you might not eat meat, you might be on the edge of it, but listen to your body when you're around meat. Listen to what it's telling you. Because I remember when I was vegan, I was in Alaska actually being a doula for one of my best friends when she was having her first child. And I was cooking Ayurvedic food for her. And I was making a lot of meat. And it was Alaska. Like it was getting cold. And I remember I ate one piece of moose meat. Which, have you ever had moose, Kate?
Never had it.
Oh my God. Oh my God. It was so rich, so delicious. And I had one piece of moose meat and I just had like tingles in my whole body. And it was like lights going off finally, like, yes, 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 yes. But I stuffed that down because my identity was around being vegan. And I was like, and then a few years later, finally, I started eating meat. So there's often a big wisdom of our body guiding us a certain way. And my hope for women listening is that what Kate is telling you kind of gives your brain that food and fuel it needs to be like, oh, it makes sense why I might be craving meat. All of these benefits that there are to eating it for women. It makes sense why my body might be guiding me that way.
Yes, absolutely. And it's like, how freeing is it to just like override dogma and to just be like, actually, does it really make sense that I have to rely on all these industrial foods in order to get my nutrition needs met? It doesn't actually. And so I'm just gonna thank you for that path and thank you for that lesson and teaching and all that I dedicated to that time. And I'm moving on to the next one now and I'm gonna feel better.
Exactly. And I think, What I want to go into is kind of this idea. So I shared something a week ago or so on Instagram, and I said, I'm not a feminist. I take it one step further. And for those listening who are like, Usha's not a feminist, I'm going to click out of this right away. It's like, no, I'm more than a feminist. I identify with center the woman, center the mother, center her health, her wellness, her vitality, and the entire family system will thrive. That's what I believe. And that's what I've seen in myself and the women who I work with. So I know that you have a mama baby biome course and you support mothers and babies in rebuilding their biome. But you were mentioning to me before we started recording that you start with the mother. And I really want women to hear why.
When I had the first birth of my son, he was born by cesarean, and that was not planned and that was not what I wanted. And I realized, when I got home with this little baby, I was like, wow, like we have so much healing to do. I have this information that I know and that I can utilize. And ultimately, we are so connected. Like every part of him right now is me. I gave him the microbiome. I grew him in my body. He needs me right now. And how could I try to heal his body separate from my body? Didn't make sense. So mama baby biome is the idea that we are not separate from our children, and that in order to help our children have the thriving life that is their birthright, we first have to heal the mother. And this is also a very practical decision, because the gut healing protocols that I teach mothers to implement for their children can be intense. It can be a real trial on the family. And so to have the stability of at least the mother, and ideally the mother and the father who have done the healing themselves first, this allows you as the mother to really truly facilitate your own healing for your child, which is what I advocate for. I believe that mothers are the ones to heal their children. There is no other person more equipped to do the job, but you need the skills and you need the knowing, the experience, the learned experience through your own body in order for that to be effective. So the way that I start in Mama Baby Biome is by helping moms heal themselves, rebuild their gut, get their immune system, their energy, their sleep, all those things on board. And it has a natural trickle-down effect. It already starts to impact the children. But once we go to implement that protocol directly on them, you are so much more equipped in knowing what to do and what their signs and symptoms actually mean.
And I love what you just said, that, mothers are the most equipped to heal our children. And I was thinking about, my postpartum experience. My birth also did not go as I planned. I still had it at home, but it was an emergency. And I had some breastfeeding issues. And so, I was in care of a midwife and all these different quote unquote holistic practitioners. But it was still like for a few years after I gave birth, like something kind of broke in me. It's like my trust in myself broke in me because of these health issues. And so it's a big initiation as a mother to remember that actually we know best, that our intuition, that our protective instincts for our children, that we can trust ourselves and listen to ourselves, even in a world that is telling us, no, the doctor knows best, the midwife knows best, the acupuncturist knows best. Even if we don't have the education, there's often an intuitive sense. And so what coming to you and working with you gives them is that they get that education, not just to heal their children, but to start with themselves.
Exactly. It's like, I really want my community first and foremost. Like people always say, like, you didn't exactly answer the question. I'm answering it in this roundabout way sometimes because I want people to see a larger scope of things and then make a decision within that for themselves, rather than me saying, this is right, this is wrong. There's a lot of decisions to be made when it comes to a healing journey and helping our children thrive. And so I want them to understand fundamentally how the body works, what the heck is going on with the microbiome, what happens when we start to change the microbiome and the symptoms that are presented, what that means. And with all of that knowledge, they are resourced with themselves within their own family ecosystem so that they don't have to outsource. And of course, in situations where they do, they have their clear mind and their good heart and their good brain, and they're able to say, we got to go to the hospital, right? And they're able to lead in that setting too, and say to, stand up to doctors and say what they need, and they don't want this and they don't want that, right? It's like all about mothers being resourced with the skills that would have been passed down in a traditional village setting, or even if our, ancestral lines weren't so broken with birth and what's happened to women over the past 100 years in the food industry and all these disruptors of the family system. all of that knowledge we would have had. But now it's like, where did it go? And we're unearthing it. And every mom that does this is unearthing it in her own way and passing it on to her children. And it's creating this massive ripple effect that is just so profound. And I'm so excited about. It gets me up out of bed in the morning. I'm dedicated, I'm a messenger for this cause.
I want to back up for a minute because, we've talked a lot about mothers, and I want to think about women who are just entering the childbearing continuum, because when I was in school for Ayurveda, I'm always looking at medicine through the lens of how can I help women? That's my mission. And so I see there's 8 different branches of medicine in Ayurveda, and I couldn't find the women's health branch. And at first I was like, oh, patriarchy, they're just excluding women. And my teacher was like, Usha, no, actually women's health is organized under pediatric care, because the body of the woman is the earth, the soil from which new life grows. And so you mentioned that you and your husband prepared your bodies for 2 years before you got pregnant. And I think that bringing more attention and awareness to that is so needed right now, especially as there's so much fear around fertility. I have 20-year-olds messaging me like, I'm afraid I'm infertile. And so tell me about kind of that preconception process and how important food is for that process for women who are just starting to look ahead to their childbearing, desire.
Okay, this is such a good topic. I have chills. I'm very, very passionate about this. And I haven't started to speak on it really on Instagram as much because of just an audience. Like there's so much work to be done with babies that are already born that I haven't shifted over to talk to more women who are just about to conceive. So if you're here listening, I am just so happy that you're here and happy to meet you. What I would say is that I had the privilege of hearing from Dr. Natasha, first and foremost, who's the founder of the GAPS diet. She's a teacher of mine and trained me in this particular way that I teach around healing. I heard her say that people shouldn't just have babies willy-nilly anymore. And I was like, well, wow, okay. It's kind of a flippant comment in a way, but it also is like very deeply eye-opening, right? It got my attention. And I was like, what does that even mean? Because I don't think my mother thought about preparing her body for pregnancy. But ancestrally, absolutely. There was a lot of emphasis put on really specific foods and preparation for women who were about to have a baby, because we need really robust stores of specific nutrients, particularly the fat-soluble vitamins and minerals, in order to grow a healthy fetus in our bodies. So just to bring it to the modern times, you are a woman who may have been on birth control like me, which is very depleting and changing to the microbiome. You might have had antibiotics, pharmaceuticals. You might have used beauty care products that now you would never, but you did in your past. These toxins accumulate in our body. And naturally, our body has a really intelligent way of dealing with toxins. But if we have a nutritional depletion problem on top of a high toxic load, the body is just going to store those toxins rather than detoxify to the extent that you need, because it's simply unsafe for the body. So when it comes to having a baby, you want to have these nutritional stores that can be passed on to your baby, which includes those fat-soluble vitamins and plenty of minerals, as well as a detox system that is open and functioning and able to do its thing. And so I really think the main thing that both my husband and I did was build our bodies with animal-based foods. So we used a lot of meat stock. We used a lot of organ meats. We ate steak, roast, beef, ground beef, lamb, fish, all of those foods, as well as all the local seasonal vegetables. We loved them. We ate them. We consumed them, cooked them, fermented them, all of that. And on top of that, we did very specific detox protocols, which I teach in Mama Baby Biome. And those detox protocols are gentle, they're natural, they're effective. I didn't use herbs or parasite cleanses, none of that. It's just simply supporting the body in what it actually does. And a huge thing about cleanses that people don't understand is you need to build before you cleanse. If you don't have the building blocks to rebuild cells, like from proteins and fats, your body is not going to be able to detoxify properly. And so it's that balance of building and cleansing that we implement, alongside things like cleansing enemas, detox baths, castor oil packs, very simple, gentle tools that are really effective for preparation. And one last thing I'll say on this piece is that when you have a detox reaction and a die-off reaction, it can feel spiritual. It's a big deal. When you're changing the microbiome, when microbes that are dying in your body that have kept you addicted to, processed foods or certain emotions, all that is very real. And this path of preparing our bodies for pregnancy was an initiation because one, we were fully committed. We were like, we know we're doing this. So in our partnership, it was a huge stepping up. Two, we were physically cleaning out toxins. So our brains, our hearts, our minds, our spirits were clearer. We were able to bring in that baby. And three, just like the hardship of like going through that together was a beautiful preparation and foundation for our children. And I swear on it. I mean, I think I say like jokingly, my flex is like young girls stopping me on the streets being like, how'd you make those babies? Like, I want to have babies like that, like with this realtor, she was just like, how did you, like, those are, it's amazing. And yes, genetics or something, but epigenetics is even more powerful. Food is our biggest influencer on our environment of our bodies. And when we change the foods we eat, we change the body, we change the ecosystem, and our children are healthier for it. Like profoundly healthy, like how they looked in The Sound of Music. The children today don't look like the children in the movies from the early 1900s. You look at the pictures, the facial structure is different. The dark circles under the eyes, like we are carrying the toxic loads of our grandparents. And it takes time for the body to release those toxins. Not only that, it takes nutrients. We need nutrition, building blocks in order to release that toxic load.
Gosh, Kate, like I want to amplify this so much. I'm so glad I asked you that because, first of all, I love that you brought in that you and your partner did that together because a lot of women think, oh, like I'm the one carrying the baby. So I'm the one who has to prepare. But sperm is 50% and it has a lot to do with the health of placenta, preeclampsia possibilities, so much. And I stand from the side of I didn't do that. So I was a vegetarian for like a decade. I started a fertility protocol. I got pregnant 1 month into it. I was totally depleted and I started pregnancy from that place of depletion. And the thing about getting pregnant is you can't build once you're pregnant, and your pregnancy will pull from your tissues. It will pull from your bones, from your tissues, from your teeth, from your brain, because that is the dedication and the devotion of our body to continue our lineage. So yeah, I grew a healthy child. She's beautiful. She's smart. She's bright. But my body suffered so much for it. I had low milk supply, postpartum depression. It took me years to rebuild after that. And so I really want women to hear what Kate just said. One of the greatest gifts you can give yourself and your children is to take time to prepare for pregnancy, because prenatal supplements, taking pregnancy vitamins, it's not enough. It's not enough to nourish those deeper layers of tissues.
Yeah. And the other thing that you just made me think of too is like you then have your values set. Like you healed your body and you know what you eat to feel good. So there's no question when the baby comes around, like, how am I going to raise this baby with food? No, because your body freaking grew that baby and was like, woo, like I'm so strong and I feel the best this way. And you saw the transformation that you went through yourself. And so then with your kids, like I can do this too. I mean, it's not like my kids never get sick. They're not these anomalies. Maybe I made it sound like that.
They look like it though. I want everyone to go to Wild Nutritionist on Instagram because her children are like, oh, those are healthy babies. You can see it. You can see the radiance. You can see the immunity in their skin.
Thank you. Yes. And right. And so I guess like the children, like I put their faces online because of that. Like I want people to remember that. I want people to think like, oh yeah, like what are we actually losing? And look, guys, this is no shame on mothers who have been through pregnancy. Like Usha just shared her story, which was amazing. Like we can always start where we are. That is the thing. And you come to this with your own individual story, experience, and the time is right now if you're just learning about it. There's no wrong time to begin.
I love what you mentioned because, so many women come with fear. Sperm rates are declining. There's a lot of fear around fertility. And in Ayurveda, it teaches that we are nature. And so if you look at the earth around us, it doesn't surprise me that there are fertility challenges happening because look at how the earth is doing. Look at how we're treating the earth. Look at the lifestyle that most of us are forced into in a modern world. And so if you want to raise your children in a certain way, what a powerful way to already make that shift now So as you said, you lock in with yourself, your body, your partner, you get that bond. And from that place, when you conceive a child, there's that imprint of the uterus is open, the energy is receptive, there's that welcoming, which impacts the baby for the rest of their life. And that's the power that you have. And I want women to hear that. You have so much power. Even though the world seems like it's on fire around us, you have so much power. And a lot of what Kate is sharing here can remind you of that.
Yeah. And it's that rebellious piece, right? Like you do have to be a rebel to be truly healthy in our society. I mean, that is it. And so when I look at young girls like dripping head to toe in polyester clothing, and they just are like, young and in college and stuff, because I live in a college town, so I'm seeing them all around me. I just want to like look at them and say, like, in 5 years, you're going to have a baby. It's the most important thing. And everything that you do now impacts that. And I promise you, like, you won't regret hearing this, right? Like, it's just, I wish someone had told me that, because we have this message, which isn't necessarily a bad message, like that women should be more independent and they, all these women can do everything that men can do. Of course. Yes, we know that. But at what cost? Right. And this is a very personal inquiry. For me, it's like, I did a lot of things. I really was invested in a career, and around 28, I was like, okie dokie, where's the husband? I called back my college boyfriend. I said, hey, let's get together, because what I needed to reproduce, I wanted to have babies. There is no better life for me. And I just think that families are the most important thing. And the more babies that I have, the more time I spend with my children, the more convicted I am over this idea that, I needed babies to heal and they needed me, and we're really changing things.
And it's such an internal reprogramming, to kind of step off the hamster wheel of proving ourselves as worthy and equal to men. It's like, I know that conversation is still needed because in many cultures and countries we're not there. But from my very privileged place, I'm bored of that conversation, because of course we're equal to men. Like, duh.
Yeah.
And I remember there's like this shirt that I saw. It's like, anything you can do, I can do bleeding. And I always say, like, yeah, anything you can do, I can do bleeding, but why would I want to?
Yeah.
Why would I want to? And I think one of the things that I really struggled with a lot, and sometimes still do as a mother, is centering how important my role is as a mom. Because as women, we're taught that if you want to do something with your life and, pay homage to the feminists who came before you, go and be that high level CEO, go and grind at that job. Like, you go, girl, go, boss babe. But here, in the Womben Wellness Podcast, we're not being girl boss. We're being girl moss. We're going and absorbing into the earth and becoming mycelium. And it's like, for me, I really had to look at that programming of, wow, what is it in me that's telling me when I'm with my child, when I'm making her food that I grew from my own garden, when I'm teaching her how to chant over her ghee that we're making during the full moon, what is this part of me that's telling me this is not enough? You are wasting your life. Being a mom is not enough. And so I think it's a really important thing that we name, because I had it within me. And I'll tell you, like, it was a big part of my postpartum depression, that feeling of like, there's more to life than this, that constantly keeps a lot of us as women and mothers stuck in this place of never satisfied. So I think what you say, Kate, is really important.
Yeah, I had a similar experience in my postpartum with my daughter, because I really emphasized the postpartum time. I had a good postpartum with Augie, and I had an even better one with Adelaide. But there were still those moments of like, I'm wanting something else, wanting to get out of the bed. I had a tear for my home birth VBAC, and I couldn't walk. I mean, it was so painful, and it was really, really hard. And I had this beautiful friend and doula who just was able to like witness me in that and, help me remember that, the little bit of boredom that's showing up right now in the postpartum can actually be an opportunity for trauma repair, because how we are with our young babies is how our mothers were with us, right? And so any bit of discomfort or, like feeling you need to crawl out of your skin, that's really worth staying with, because there's probably a gem in there for you to heal something that wasn't given to you. And so that is really how I view motherhood. And I just want to tell you one more story, which I think is very appropriate for the Womben Wellness podcast. My son is 3.5, and I was laying down in bed after work, because hey, I do work. I have a job. Usha and I both have jobs. But I was laying down in my bed, and my son comes up to me and he goes, "Mom, are you laying down because of your blood?"
My daughter says the same.
It was just the best ever moment, because a month or two before I had told him I'm in bed because I'm bleeding, and I was explaining that to him. I just love that story. That was a moment where I was like, okay, I'm doing something right. I'm doing something right.
My
Mama,
daughter says the same.
It's so sweet. It's so wonderful. And like, that is the kind of education that I know you're doing in your programs, and it's all integrative, right? So there's just so many ways that children are living differently than how we grew up, and it really does make a difference. So I'm excited. I'm so glad to be connected, and thank you for having me as like a multi-guest in many ways, because it's really fun to continue these conversations and to have the through lines, both with the audience and with you, of course.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, we've got to schedule a few more podcasts. There's some things we got to go deeper into. And I get that question a lot, Kate. It's like, how can I teach my boys about like how to honor women, how to honor like their partners if they, have female partners in their cycles, or how can I teach my daughter about how to honor herself during her period? And I always respond the same, which is children learn self-care through modeling. And so your son watching you rest is learning that, oh, not only does mom need rest, women need rest when they bleed, but I'm also allowed to rest if I need it. Your daughter is learning the same. And so, we can get them books, we can get them courses, but you taking care of yourself as a mother is the permission slip for your children in the future to do the same. And I don't know about you, but I didn't grow up in a home where rest was normalized. I'm like an Irish Catholic family, like Midwest. It's like you work till you're sick and you're proud of it. And so to rest before is so important. And to do that for ourselves, to nourish ourselves through what you've talked about today, to give ourselves that permission to actually build, which takes rest, which takes nutrient dense food, that is giving our children permission to honor their bodies and live in that way for them too.
Absolutely.
Kate, thank you so much for this beautiful, rich conversation. I feel like we could be on here for 3 hours. Is there any way that women can connect with you? So I know you have your mama baby biome course and you have your wild nutritionist, but anything else you want to mention here?
Yeah, find me on Instagram. That is the best way to connect. And I have tons of free resources. I have a free meat stock guide, which has recipes and the difference between bone broth and meat stock, and will set you up to get started. I have free masterclasses. So yeah, consume all my free content and meet me in a course one day.
And go and see her beautiful babies that we have mentioned so much. Go see those healthy, radiant children. They speak for themselves.
Thank you
so much, Kate. Thank you for your time. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Womben Wellness Podcast. If this episode touched you in some way, it would mean so much if you could subscribe and download this episode. If you want to learn more about my work, you can go to womenwellness.com or come say hi on Instagram, send me a message, and tell me what you loved about the show.